Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. Zach Edey was completely dominant in a return to Indiana. Also, by the way, Desmond Bane looked pretty good in his homecoming to Indiana. Both players scored 23 points and led the Grizzlies to a wire-to-wire preseason victory over the Indiana Pacers. On today's episode, going to talk about Edey and Bane and also Yuki Kawamura. Also, Jalen Wells keeps looking very solid. We're going to get into every player who played and what it means possibly for the regular season rotation. Before we do, just a reminder, if you want to play fantasy basketball with me, I'm having one fantasy draft tonight. You can't get in that one. But if you want to play in the league that drafts on Wednesday night, this is a regular head-to-head fantasy league. There are still a couple of slots available where we can squeeze you in. If you want to sign up, go to patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you want to play in the negative fantasy league with me, that draft is on Sunday. So you have until midnight Saturday night, Saturday, October 19th, to join Patreon. Or if you're already a Patreon supporter, just go sign up. Go to patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast on the main page. Anyone who is a Patreon supporter at the $5 a month tier or higher can sign up and play. The negative fantasy league is uncapped, so we will fit as many people in that want to play. That's a league where you get rewarded for missed shots, turnovers, fouls, that kind of thing. Dylan Brooks is an absolute legend in that league. So if you want to support my show, get access to bonus content, and play fantasy basketball with me, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. Zach Edey, this is what we're talking about. This is what we were looking forward to. This is the preseason domination that we hoped to see. The first couple of games for Zach, not that amazing. Little bit understated. Perhaps the team wasn't giving him the ball enough. Perhaps they were making him stand in the corner. The game against the Bulls was quite nice. Put together a nice stretch of play in that one. In this game, he came off the bench, which was interesting. They have been experimenting with lineups, but he comes off the bench, and as a super sub, he absolutely wrecks the Pacers. Now, there was a brief hiccup when he got in the game. He checks in the game, midway through the first quarter. First play for the Pacers, Miles Turner drills a top-of-the-key three-pointer because Zach Edey is back and drop. It's a wide-open three-pointer. This is one of the things we've circled, or people circled. The draft experts circled for Zach Edey. How is he going to defend perimeter players, big guys who shoot? So that was a example of, all right, we conceded the open three. Then Zach comes down, misses his first hook shot. So you're thinking, all right, this is going to be the challenge for Zach Edey. But after that, it was all smooth sailing. He got the ball in the post, converted with his very trusty right-hand hook. Then Yuki Kawamura found him for a dunk once again. Yet another no-look pass from Yuki that leads to a Zach Edey dunk. Then Edey does that spin move left. Of course, it was very similar to the clip that we saw in the Bulls game where Marcus Smart was demonstrating some post moves. No, we do not believe that Marcus Smart taught Zach Edey to go left, but it's still fun. It's a fun little social media clip. Marcus Smart saying, hey, how about spinning left? And then in this game, he absolutely pulled out that spin to the left, got the big dunk. And then after that, Miles Turner was having no fun. Anytime Edey got it in the paint, it was the right-hand hook, and he was making them. The touch he displayed on those hooks was really cool to see. And so he ends up scoring 23 points in just 19 minutes. Now, there were still a couple of plays where he lost the ball in traffic, where he tried to go up, got his shot blocked. He still is not maybe grabbing the most rebounds. He gets credited for a lot of offensive rebounds where he's just tapping the ball. Tapping the ball is important, but I still, if I'm going to get picky, if I'm going to get like really greedy about how good I want Zach Edey to be, I would love to see him coming down with more of those rebounds, but still an absolutely scintillating display with the 23 points, 9 rebounds, an assist, and a steal. Made 10 out of 15 of his field goal attempts. He also tried a top of the key three-pointer. Did not go in, but he was kind of feeling himself at that point. So a great game for Zach Edey. All the Zach Edey fans who were there, all the Purdue fans who made the trip to Indianapolis. Matt Painter, the coach of Purdue, was there in the front row. Matt and Zach, they were talking on the court after the game. Everyone who came to see Zach Edey, I think, was absolutely satisfied with the dominant performance. I also assume everyone who came to see Desmond Bane, who's from Indiana, all his friends and family and fans were there. They were also thoroughly entertained. Desmond Bane scored 23 points in just 23 minutes, was 3 out of 5 from the three-point line, got 2 of his flyby pump fake three-pointers off that went in. He made 9 out of 16 shots overall. He was looking in peak regular season form, absolutely ready. Now, let's talk about the rotation pattern and the way it went down. And the fact that Edey came off the bench, again, very, very interesting. He is now basically alternated in the halves that he's played in the preseason. Edey has been the starter half the time, and he's come off the bench half the time. What does that mean for opening night? I would guess it means he's still going to start, but there are a lot of questions about the actual rotation and depth chart. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in depth in just a second. But in this game, Desmond Bane, of course, was back after having his game off. Marcus Smart did not play. This was not necessarily a game off on the broadcast. They said Marcus was under the weather. So they're keeping track at home. Marcus was sick against the Pacers. He's not injured. Against the Bulls, it was scheduled rest. He's not injured. The previous game, he left with injury, but could have played if it was the regular season. He's not injured. So am I nervous Marcus Smart is injured? Yes, but also reportedly he's not injured. According to the team, not injured. Maybe he will play in the preseason finale, the home game against the Miami Heat this Friday night. But with no Marcus Smart, the starters were Scottie Pippen Jr., Desmond Bane, then Jake LaRavia got the start at the 3. And then in the front court, Santi Aldama was back after having the night off against the Bulls, and Brandon Clark starts. So again, the starters, Scottie Pippen Jr., Desmond Bane, Jake LaRavia, Santi Aldama, and Brandon Clark. Now, after Jalen Wells' really good game against the Bulls, I was thinking maybe in this game against the Pacers, he would get the opportunity to start at small forward because they'd been basically alternating between like John Conchar or Jake LaRavia to run those minutes with the starting lineup. I thought maybe Jalen played so well, you want to see what that looks like with him playing alongside the other ones. Now, that didn't happen, but Jalen Wells did steal somebody's minutes in this game. He actually stole Jay Huff's minutes, as far as I can tell. Jay Huff, who also, by the way, had a good game against the Bulls. He was awesome. Jay Huff did not play in the first half. That was a fun little wrinkle. Jay Huff, who's having a tremendous preseason, didn't play in the first half. They went with Jalen Wells essentially at the power forward. The second unit for the Grizzlies in this game, you had Yuki Kawamura, who was just scintillating. The highlight package that Yuki Kawamura put together in this game, spectacular. I mean, I'm going to say it's Ja Morant-esque. You think of a player who put together more highlights in one game? The only one I can think of is like Ja Morant. Maybe Stromile Swift back in the day. But Yuki Kawamura was the backup point guard. Luke Kennard played in this game, backup shooting guard. Conchar and Jalen Wells were the backup wings. We'll call them the 3/4. And then Edey, of course, coming off the bench. So your 5-man bench unit that played together was Yuki Kawamura, Luke Kennard, John Conchar, Jalen Wells, and Zach Edey. And I legitimately think if Jalen Wells had not looked very good the past 2 games, those were going to be Jay Huff minutes. We've already seen Jay Huff and Zach Edey play together. I mean, maybe not. Maybe because they put Zach Edey on the second unit with that big guy. They wanted to see more of a smaller lineup. They talked about this actually at training camp. Taylor Jenkins mentioned they want to do some lineups where Zach Edey is the only true big, and then they run like Marcus Smart at the 4 or Jake LaRavia at the 4. In this situation, it was either Wells or Conchar at the 4. But that was the overall 10-man rotation that they used in the first half. Now, Scottie Pippen Jr. in the start, it was not an excellent game from Scottie Pippen Jr. I guess I would just call it an all right game from Scottie Pippen. The performance that he's had this preseason, I would describe it as adequate. I thought the first 2 games were his best games. The last 2 games, not as good. And I think he hasn't convinced me that he needs to be in a 10-man rotation when the team is fully healthy. I think right now I've seen more from John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, and Jalen Wells in the preseason, where I'm more confident in those guys playing on the second unit, and then just staggering your guards, having Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Ja Morant, Luke Kennard handle all of that point guard play, handle it by committee. I don't feel there's a need to necessarily play Scottie Pippen Jr. every night. Now, on a 2-way, he can't play every night, but is he deserving of that open roster spot, one of the 2 open roster spots? Again, it's gotten murkier. If you had to say in a vacuum who's had the more impressive preseason, Jay Huff on a 2-way or Scottie Pippen Jr. on a 2-way, I would say Jay Huff has maybe been more impressive. Now, maybe it's because our expectations were higher for Scottie Pippen Jr. I think if you weren't a Grizzlies fan and you tuned into all their preseason games, you're probably saying, hey, Scottie Pippen Jr. is quite good. And he is. He is quite good. But I don't think he's a backup point guard that you need to play every single night. So it's a tough decision. And you look at maybe the roster needs. What are the most important positional needs for this shorthanded roster right now? It's probably point guard. If Jalen Wells is going to play some 4 or Jake LaRavia plays 4, maybe you feel a little bit better about your front court rotation with Edey and with Brandon Clark and with Jaren Jackson Jr. Thus, you would give a standard contract to Scottie Pippen Jr. But that has been an interesting battle so far in the preseason. Scottie ended up in this game with 5 assists. He had 9 points. He was only 2 out of 8 from the 3-point line. 3 more turnovers for Scottie Pippen Jr. Taking care of the basketball is a legitimate issue with Scottie Pippen Jr. He had his pocket picked, just bringing the ball up the court. 1-on-1 in the backcourt, had a turnover, had the ball taken away from him. He needs to do a better job of taking care of the basketball. Now, Jake LaRavia in the start missed all 3 of his 3-pointers, but for someone who hasn't shot the ball well in preseason, he's had a really good run. He had 8 rebounds and 6 assists. If Jake LaRavia, if he gives you 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and gets to the foul line 3 times, you're going to take that. You're going to accept him going 0 for 3 from 3 if he gives you everything else. And he's been giving you everything else. He did turn the ball over 3 times as well, but I haven't been discouraged at all by what Jake LaRavia has done this preseason. Brandon Clark, in the rare start, not the best. He had 1 highlight play where he got a steal and a breakaway dunk. He missed all 5 of the rest of his field goal attempts. He had 2 rebounds. He did end up with 3 total steals, so that's a nice number. He, once again, only played in the first half, played 14 minutes. Now, Santi Aldama has had a good shooting preseason. He has made 43% of his threes so far in the preseason. The actual raw numbers, that is 6 out of 14. So not a ton, but the 3-pointers are going in. And that is, I think, the most important attribute that he's going to bring to these lineups. And when we think about opening night starters and we start thinking, hey, is Zach Edey going to be a 6th man? Have we considered the fact that they could start Santi Aldama and Jaren Jackson Jr.? The problem with that, theoretically, would be, beyond our general rebounding concerns we always have. By the way, the Grizzlies had another very good rebounding game. The preseason has been good for rebounding. The Grizzlies got a massive number of offensive rebounds in this game. But could the Grizzlies start Santi Aldama and Jaren Jackson Jr.? Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Santi, and Jaren? That's a good 5-man lineup. Is it what you want to start with? The issue being what I was going to say like 30 seconds earlier. Then you have Brandon Clark and Zach Edey on the bench. Maybe you don't want that because that is not the perfect fit. That is not one of their top priorities as far as a big man combination. But Santi, I think, has had a very nice preseason. Maybe we want to cite him being in great shape and being very, very sharp after his Olympics play. But Santi has looked good so far. Now, off the bench, I think the big highlight, again, is Yuki Kawamura. This was easily his best game of the preseason. He actually hit some jumpers. He hasn't been that aggressive. He's almost been Jacob Gilyard-esque in the way he doesn't look at the basket. Of course, he's very, very tiny, also like Jacob Gilyard, and he's mainly been focusing on setting other players up, and he's done a great job of that all preseason. But in this one, he hits 2 3-pointers in the first half, and then he puts together the most ridiculous array of passes. Every single pass seemingly was a no-look. He's always great at looking off the defense whenever Zach Edey's man loses him. So he finds Edey under the bucket for these dunks. Then some of these no-looks where he hit Jay Huff on the baseline. Jay Huff basically knew nothing about the pass. The spin that Kawamura puts on this that leads Huff to the open spot to make the reverse layup, absolutely spectacular play. And then in the fourth quarter, Yuki hits Jay Huff in the corner where he moves the defense with his eyes. These are not just flashy no-looks. These are useful, purposeful no-looks that manipulate the defense, cause them to go to the wrong player. And meanwhile, Yuki's throwing it to a wide-open Jay Huff in the corner who knocks down the three-pointer. Very spectacular game from Yuki, who ends up making 3 3-pointers for the night. So he has 10 points, 7 assists, also gets a steal. Really nice stuff from Yuki Kawamura. Now, is he deserving of either a two-way spot or a main roster spot? I saw somebody from The Athletic saying, like, Scottie Pippen Jr. and Yuki Kawamura are in a backup point guard battle, and Yuki is winning. I was surprised to see this. I don't agree with this. But Yuki has been really good. He has had the ball taken away from him a few times in a way that doesn't feel like an NBA point guard. Andrew Nembhard had a back tap where he just picked his pocket and got a breakaway layup. In the previous game, Talen Horton-Tucker just took the ball away from Yuki while he was dribbling. But Yuki's command, maybe of the new offense, maybe he would do this in any offense. I'm sure Tomas Isalo is like, man, if I had this guy on my Euro Cup team last year, I know they were really good, but still. Yuki's been really impressive with the way he finds cutters, the way he leads guys into layups with his passes, and the way he has been able to manipulate defenders with the no-looks. I've been absolutely wowed by Yuki. If Scottie Pippen Jr. gets promoted to the main squad and they have an open two-way spot, would Yuki take the two-way spot? I don't know. He could probably make, I'm certain he can make a lot more money overseas. Would he take the two-way spot, and would they offer it to him? It's a fair question, and possibly yes, because he's been that impressive. Of course, maybe one of the guys he would be fighting for that two-way spot is my guy Malginha Pereira, who just keeps inhaling rebounds, and also, by the way, made an above-the-break three-pointer. That's right. Let's do a little eyes emoji. That's 3 made three-pointers this preseason for Malginha. Now, maybe I overstate it when I say he inhales rebounds. He only had 1 rebound in this game, but so far in the preseason, he's averaging 13 rebounds per 30 minutes of playing time. So he's a great rebounder. If he makes those threes, I'm very excited to see what he turns into. Now, also off the bench, Luke Kennard played just 6 minutes. His normal traditional role off the bench, had one made three-pointer in 3 attempts, also got an assist and a rebound. Jalen Wells continues playing very, very well. Made 4 out of 7 of his field goal attempts, was 2 out of 3 from downtown. Also got 3 assists. He keeps passing the ball really, really well. Has 12 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal for preseason now. 10 for 22 from the three-point line. So he has provided everything you wanted from him. He is absolutely in a competition for more playing time when the regular season starts. And actually, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about the rest of the guys who played, and then we'll try to assess where these rotation battles or these playing time battles, where things stand after 4 preseason games. All right, so Jalen Wells had a nice game off the bench, as I was talking about. John Conchar did not get to start. They gave Jake LaRavia the start to begin the game. Conchar off the bench. I mean, just as I like to say, did John Conchar things. 4 more offensive rebounds, finishes with 8 rebounds overall, gets 2 steals, has 6 points, misses his only 2 3-point attempts. Right now, for preseason, do you know who's leading the Grizzlies in offensive rebounds? 2 guys are tied. Zach Edey with 11, John Conchar with 11. Now, Zach Edey's offensive rebounds, if you go and watch them on NBA.com, a lot of them are uncontrolled taps where he doesn't really get the ball or get the ball towards the basket in an actual shot attempt. John Conchar's offensive rebounds, he's usually actually grabbing the ball. Do you know who's leading the Grizzlies in blocks in the preseason? It's a tie once again. Zach Edey has 5. John Conchar has 5. John Conchar has had a really strong preseason. There's nothing John Conchar has done in the preseason that would make you think, hey, that guy deserves less playing time. Now, you could argue Jalen Wells has done things that you feel like you should give some of Conchar's time to Jalen Wells because Jalen Wells has a higher ceiling. No argument with that analysis. But Conchar has been very, very strong so far this preseason. Also, hey, homecoming game for John Conchar, who played at Purdue Fort Wayne. Other bench guys, Jay Huff only played essentially garbage time. I mean, he got in late in the third quarter, then played most of his minutes in the fourth quarter. He had 8 points, made another 3-pointer, got 2 assists, 1 rebound. Let's do fun with per 30-minute stats. I already told you Malzinha Pereira averages 13 rebounds per 30 minutes in the preseason. Here are Zach Edey's per 30-minute stats, and I'm going to compare them with Jay Huff's per 30-minute stats. Zach Edey in the preseason, per 30 minutes, he's averaging 20 points, 10.8 rebounds, 1.9 blocks, and 1.9 assists. That is tremendous. That is great. That is absolutely what I was hoping for. I was very nervous after the first 2 games that we weren't seeing that. I thought we would see preseason games where Edey did 20 and 10. Exactly what he did against the Pacers. So Edey's per 30-minute averages, 20 points, 10.8 rebounds, 1.9 blocks, 1.9 assists. Here are Jay Huff's per 30-minute averages. 20.3 points, 8.6 rebounds, 1.9 blocks, 2.4 assists. And oh, by the way, 4.3 made threes per 30 minutes. Now, of course, that was just fun with stats. I'm not advocating for Jay Huff doing anything over Zach Edey. But Jay Huff has been tremendous in all of his opportunities. Maybe he's turned the basketball over a little bit too much. In the previous 2 games, I didn't mention them on the episodes, Jay Huff had a lot of passes that were thrown away. Now, are the Grizzlies being encouraged to make these aggressive passes? Perhaps. And turnovers have been a thing I've mentioned for the whole team over the first 3 preseason games. They finally took care of the basketball a little bit. Only 16 turnovers for the team in this game against the Pacers. I mean, hey, good job. Their previous low in the preseason was 21. So the team has been a little bit turnover prone. Maybe they're getting a little bit better about taking care of the basketball. Maybe they're getting more accustomed to the new offense. I mean, we keep seeing the backdoor cuts. Like John Conchar specifically keeps hitting these backdoor cut layups. Also, maybe this game, there were fewer new offense hiccups because you were just throwing the ball to Zach Edey. Zach Edey had so many post-ups. Are they going to break from maybe this free-flowing style to just give Zach the ball in the paint? I think they actually are. Because if he's defended one-on-one, I don't think many guys can stop him. I mean, he's going to turn right and shoot over anybody. So that'll be, I guess, an issue for the coaching staff to work out how much they want to give Zach Edey the ball in the paint. All right. Armando Bacot got in the game in the fourth quarter. Did not do that much with his time. The Pacers cut into this lead. I think the Grizzlies were up by 20 or 21. The Pacers had a 16-2 run. It was actually ended by a Jalen Wells three-pointer. Good job there. That, I think, put the lead back up to 10. Then the following possession, Maljinha made his three-pointer, and the Grizzlies end up winning the game. Now, let's talk big picture depth chart things to finish this episode. The undisputed, non-confusing portion of the Grizzlies starting lineup in rotation, you got Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think we can go ahead and say, with the injury to Vince Williams Jr., Marcus Smart still starting small forward. Beyond that, it's still, I think, trending towards Zach Edey being the starter. He started the first two preseason games in the first half. Of course, in the second half, he did not start the games. By the way, in this game, I guess I could have mentioned it, they changed the starting lineup for the second half. In the second half, Brandon Clark did not start. Of course, he did not play at all in the second half. But also in the second half, Jake LaRavia did not start. They started the third quarter with Scottie Pippen Jr., Desmond Bane, Jalen Wells, Santi Aldama, and Zach Edey. So they're continually trying new looks. But when we think about the depth chart, I think still absolutely the most likely thing is that Marcus Smart and Zach Edey are your fourth and fifth starters. Now, beyond that, huge questions. I think you can basically write in ink that Santi Aldama is going to be your backup power forward. The fact that he's made his three-pointers in the preseason, he's hit his corner threes, something he weirdly struggled with last year. Santi Aldama, I feel comfortable, is your backup four. I think you could make the argument that Jay Huff has outplayed Brandon Clark. If you want to say there was a positional battle, if it was a training camp battle, just based on what we've seen this preseason, the advantage would be to Jay Huff. But of course, that's not how these decisions are made. Brandon Clark has been a tremendous basketball player for many, many seasons. We're absolutely playing Brandon Clark over Jay Huff until Brandon Clark shows he just doesn't have it in the regular season. So Brandon Clark, more than likely, going to be your backup. So I think backup front court pretty set with Santi Aldama and Brandon Clark. The people also in competition for those spots, you'd say Jay Huff. You'd also say one of the younger wings, if they play a little bit smaller. Could be Jake LaRavia, could be Jalen Wells. Now, Luke Kennard is going to play off the bench. That's a guard that we're not confused about. Now, beyond that, if we go 10 deep, if the Grizzlies go 10 deep, there are two spots available. And this, of course, is not even considering Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr., who are going to miss the open to the season. So if our three bench players we feel very confident in are Luke Kennard, Santi Aldama, and Brandon Clark, you have Jalen Wells, John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, and Scottie Pippen Jr. in consideration for those four spots. I don't think anyone else is in consideration. I think Scottie Pippen Jr. has shown a lot through last season, through Summer League, and through the preseason where you're like, okay, that's a pretty good backup point guard to have. I think Jalen Wells has been tremendous this preseason. I think LaRavia, despite shooting a bad percentage in the preseason, and honestly shooting a bad percentage for most of the games he's played in his life at the professional level, he still does enough other stuff where I'm very comfortable with him playing. He rebounds the ball well. He has good size. He creates plays on the offensive and defensive end. Maybe he gets some of those Kobe assists, but he gets himself to the foul line and he defends well enough. I'm comfortable with him playing. Also, John Conchar has been good this preseason, and he is a glue guy. He always helps out the team when he plays. And if we're talking about a bench role, he's not going to harm you there. So I think right now, I could say which one of those 4 players, which 2 are you picking? Scottie Pippen Jr., John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, and Jalen Wells. And I'm not going to get mad or disagree with any of the 2 you pick. I think right now the Grizzlies are in a pretty good spot where you feel comfortable with those guys. Now, of course, I've always maybe tried to hold the Grizzlies to a higher bar. I still wish we had better players than those guys. I still wish we had more than 13 players on the regular roster. But right now, I think you got to be happy with the way the preseason has gone for Pippen and for LaRavia and for Conchar and for Jalen Wells, also for Jay Huff. It looks like you have some good options who can fill in until Vince Williams Jr. and Gigi Jackson are back. Then when those guys are back, man, I don't know what you do. I mean, I know what I do. I play Vince Williams Jr., but there is going to be a healthy competition for playing time this season on the Grizzlies, and hopefully that will result in a very successful regular season. And with that, I think we can wrap it up. I've hit all of my notes. Once again, Zach Edey, extremely dominant in just 19 minutes. He has definitely taken over social media in the last 12 hours. All NBA fans back on board with Zach Edey and Yuki Kawamura. What a highlight reel you put together. Oh, and yawn. Desmond Bane is good. We already knew all that stuff. Anyways, if you want to support my show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. You can join my listener Slack channel. You can join the Grits and Grinds Grizzlies Slack channel. And of course, you can play fantasy basketball with me. The deadline for regular fantasy, it's Wednesday, October 16th. You got to sign up by the morning. If you want to play my negative fantasy league, the draft is on Sunday. You have to sign up by this Saturday, October 19th. All right. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz!